Very good afternoon to you. We start with breaking news. China has retaliated again in its trade war with the US, announcing an 84% tariff on all American imports. Comes after President Trump announced he was raising levies against China to a total of 124%. That level kicked in this morning. Financial markets around the world, including the FTSE 100, have once again suffered heavy losses after the announcement. China has accused the Trump administration of bullying and abuse of the tariff system. Well, let's take a look at how the trade war between the two nations developed. When Donald Trump came back into office for his second term, China and the US were already operating under 20% tariffs on each other. The US president then upped the ante, raising tariffs on China by 10% in his first month, another 10% in his second, and then a further 34% on what he called Liberation Day. China then responded with a reciprocal tariff of 34%, claiming that America was being engaged in economic bullying. The Trump administration then doubled down, raising its duties on China by a further 50%. And today we've seen the response from President Xi Jinping, with China also raising tariffs against the US by 50%. Well, in a moment, we'll get a latest from Washington with David Blevins. First, though, to east of China and our Asia correspondent, Helen-Ann Smith. And Helen, this trade war really digging in deep. Both sides not going to let up anytime soon. What's the impact on the trade between the two?
Oh, the impact's going to be absolutely enormous. I mean, the whole world has been watching all day to see what China would do. And in the end, it was decisive, exactly matching what Donald Trump announced on Wednesday. In total, American goods coming into this country taxed at 84%. That's in addition to previous tariffs on specific products left over from earlier. There was also action actually against 18 American companies, we should mention as well. So when you take a step back and look at these massive numbers, what it really amounts to is trade between the world's two biggest economies, almost impossible in practical terms now, just completely decimated in a matter of weeks. And it's really hard to overstate the impact that will have, not just here in China, but on the global economy as well. I'm currently in the city of Yiwu. This is the home to the world's largest wholesale market. If you've ever bought anything with a Made in China label on it, it was very likely bought from here. Importers from all over the world, they come here, they mass buy products, and they ship them abroad and sell them. And traders in that market today were saying that their business has already just fallen off a cliff. One gentleman telling me his orders have gone down 60% already. So just totally devastating for the individual traders that work here. I think in the end, China made a calculation that it just couldn't be seen to not respond. There is a really deep-seated belief here amongst the upper echelons of government that the US's ultimate end goal is to restrain China, to hold it back, to undermine it. And when you take it in that context, really giving in just isn't an option. It isn't practical. It doesn't serve a purpose for the Chinese. But I do think it is worth saying that they have really specifically chosen to avoid some measures that were being touted that would have been far more provocative, if you like. They've chosen to match Donald Trump tariff for tariff instead of taking some measures such as, for example, ceasing all cooperation over fentanyl. That was one of the things that was touted. That would be hugely provocative to Donald Trump. There was also suggested measures such as targeting very, very high-profile American companies like Tesla or Apple, perhaps even doing things like banning the import of American films. I mean, things like that would have been hugely significant culturally as well as just economically. But finally, I just want to leave you with this thought. These two superpowers have disagreed over so much over the years, and trade has really been the backstop, the one issue over which they were always linked. And without that, there are real questions about where this relationship goes next.
Helen-Ann for us in China. Thank you. Let's bring in David, who's in the US. And David, just looking at comments coming from the Treasury Secretary saying that China should come to the table. But what China's doing is imposing these tariffs, and it points to the US as the people that, started this all.
Yes, the White House clearly signalling that the United States has no intention of backing down. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, has been doing the rounds of US networks this morning and describing China as the surplus country. He said their exports to the US are 5 times our exports to China, so they can raise their tariff but so what, he asked. He then suggested that China should start by acknowledging that the chemicals used in the drug fentanyl, which is flooding the United States, often begin in China, and suggested they should follow the example of Vietnam and come here to negotiate. He said Vietnam are sending a delegation next week to negotiate. So we remain in this paradoxical position where the United States continues to say these tariffs are non-negotiable, but encouraging countries to pick up the phone and to negotiate. And really, that's what Donald Trump has been boasting about. At an event last night, he claimed countries were lining up to do deals. They are kissing my ass, is what he said. And that was really doubling down on what his press secretary had said earlier in the day, claiming that lots of countries, nearly 70 of them, had been in touch. Caroline Levitt said the phone was ringing off the hook that countries were, and I quote, falling over themselves to do a deal. But despite all of his boasting about the fact that the tariffs are working, we do see fault lines opening up, both within his own administration, where there's now a very clearly public spat going on between two advisors, Elon Musk and Peter Navarro, the president's trade and tariff advisor-in-chief, I suppose. Navarro suggested that Elon Musk was an assembler of cars rather than a manufacturer of cars, and was using cheap imports from elsewhere, to which Musk responded that Peter Navarro is a moron. But there's also a fault line developing between the White House and Republican members of Congress now, some of them expressing deep concern about what's going on in the market. So as Helen-Ann was saying, this isn't just about the economy. Significant though this is, a real significant increase in the trade war between the world's two largest economies, it is also a political development as well.
David in Washington for us. Before that, Helen-Ann, thank you both so much.